Hey guys, welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Andre Siggers, and this time we're joined by Ash Paulson to discuss his hands-on time with Super Mario Maker for Nintendo 3DS, as well as his impressions of the NES Classic. So, let's get started. Okay Ash, so you gotta go hands-on to Super Mario Maker for the Nintendo 3DS for the first time, and I know you played a fair amount of the Wii U one when it came out. So, how's this one stack up so far? And I know you didn't get played for a whole lot, but what are your early impressions of it?
Well, it is exactly what it says in the box, which is Super Mario Maker for Nintendo 3DS. I mean, you know, what is there to say about it? It's Mario Maker for 3DS. It looks good unless you're playing in New Super Mario Bros. U mode, in which case it looks terrible. You know, what's there to say that hasn't been said? We already know that you can't share. There's really no interactivity with the Wii U version, which, you know, kind of sucks. You know, I will say that I got to mess around with the course maker for a little bit. Making courses does feel pretty natural on the 3DS. I mean, I was using the stylus to place course elements and erase them and move things around, and I did like that the A, B, X, and Y buttons, the face buttons, have the same functionality as the D-pad. So if you're a lefty like me, you can still have that functionality of moving Mario around on top of the course, even if you're a lefty. So the face buttons have that same functionality. So that was kind of a forward-thinking design decision, I think. I played a few of the, I went to the course bot, and the course bot has a folder for my courses, which of course are the courses you make yourself, and then a folder called challenge courses, which are courses included on there by Nintendo to begin with when you buy the game. And there are going to be quite a few of them because they start at 1-1, and they actually go all the way up to 1912. So there are a lot of courses and challenge, quote-unquote challenge courses in here, pre-made in the game for you to play when you buy it. And they were a lot of fun to play from what I played. So, you know, they're well-designed 2D Mario courses made by Nintendo, which is always a cool thing.
Are those the ones that are exclusive to the 3DS one?
I want to say yes, but I don't know for sure. So there might be a few peppered in there that are from the Wii U version, but the ones I played seem to all be new.
And how did those levels seem? Did they seem, you know, more like a typical Mario game, or did they seem closer to some of the wacky stuff you'd see, you know, in a Mario Maker level, depending on who's creating it?
They kind of felt like a mix. Like, they kind of felt like someone who really knew what they were doing went in, obviously, and went in and created some Mario Maker levels. So, you know, it just feels like they felt like very professionally made Mario Maker levels. They had their own gimmicks, and they had different focuses. Like, one of the ones I played, I think, like, 1910 or something, was it was all wall jumping, and it wasn't that hard, but it was basically all wall jumping and jumping on top of, you know, cannonballs and things to cross a pit. So it was emphasizing wall jumping and jumping on enemies, but it felt like a really well-made Super Mario Maker course.
Well, that sounds good so far. How'd it actually feel to play? I mean, it's a Mario game, so I'm guessing it felt, you know, pretty responsive, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, the controls felt great, super responsive. All the gameplay itself, so all the course elements, meaning anything that you can place within a stage, it seemed to me that all those things ran at 60 frames per second, including the gameplay itself. Now, the special effects on top of that, like the sound effects, bubbles for when Mario's swimming underwater, things like that, that stuff seems to run at 30 frames per second, and it is noticeable. It's a noticeable difference. You know, the game doesn't look that great compared to the Wii U version. Obviously, the Wii U is a high-definition console, so that's to be expected. But at the same time, you know, it's kind of apt when talking about what's essentially a 2D Mario game. I mean, it really does, you can tell. It looks worse, it runs worse on the 3DS, at least the special effects do. Again, playing just regular stages feels fine, feels great. But when you get some of those sound effects in there, you know, things like the crash sound effect where things fall from the top of the screen, bubbles underwater, you know, various little elements on top of the course all run at 30 frames, and you can tell for sure.
Now, is that across all the themes, or is that mostly in the new Super Mario Bros. U one, which you were talking to me about before we started recording this?
No, that is actually noticeable across all themes. But the new Super Mario Bros. U theme uniquely just looks bad. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, it looks really bad on the 3DS screen. Like, the assets look kind of washed out. It doesn't, you know, it looks kind of blurry. It looks kind of smeary. It almost looks kind of like someone took their hand and just kind of wiped across the screen. And that's kind of what the new Super Mario Bros. U theme looks like. It just kind of smeary, I guess. It would be a good way to put it. It almost looks like it's trying to emulate new Super Mario Bros. U, if that makes any sense. Like, it looks like it's trying to approximate what that game would look like and not quite making it.
That's kind of interesting, although I guess it kind of makes sense given the fact that the original new Super Mario Bros. Games used, you know, polygonal models, whereas Mario Maker turned those into sprites instead.
Right.
So I guess when they downscaled those for the 3DS, it just didn't translate quite as well, whereas the other Mario games had more, pixelated assets, so they hold up better, or, perfect even. But at least that is a new Super Mario Bros. U theme, which in my opinion is my least favorite of the themes, so...
Exactly. I mean, it really doesn't look good. On the other hand, I do want to emphasize that the other themes, Mario 1, Mario 3, and Mario World, they all look great. I mean, they have that widescreen presentation on the 3DS. The entire screen is used, so it's not like you're looking at a letterboxed version of the stage. It does use all of the 3DS screens, so it looks nice, and it's kind of like I would liken what the 8-bit and 16-bit themes in Mario Maker look like to the difference between maybe a Virtual Console game and playing something like the NES Classic. You know how just the pixels are better separated, there's better definition, it doesn't look blurry. Like the 8-bit, or I should say Mario 1, Mario 3, and Mario World all look great. So I do want to emphasize that, but man, yeah, the new Super Mario Bros. U theme looks pretty bad.
Okay, so at least the themes that really matter look good. But how did the game actually run? Did it have a pretty smooth frame rate, or did things get a little bit, dicey once there's a lot of stuff happening on screen?
Actually, I did when too much was happening in terms of special effects on screen. So again, like the sound effect type things. If too much of that happened at once, I did notice a little slowdown. Not too much. It wasn't game breaking or anything, but it's definitely something that would not happen on the Wii U version, for example.
Did you notice anything else different from the Wii U one in your few minutes with the game?
Yeah. One thing that stood out to me was that some of the sound effects do seem to be missing. So, like, you know how there's that rave, dancey sound effect that happens? That was nowhere to be found. So it does seem like the sound effect list has been pared down a bit.
Did you try shaking them? Because I can't remember if that was one that was hidden behind one of the other sound effects, but I know, for all of them you can shake them to get a second version.
I did not, but I didn't think that the dance one made you shake anything.
Yeah, it might not have. I honestly don't remember, but it does kind of make sense given that from the interface we've seen, it only displays 9 icons at a time instead of 12. So I guess it makes sense that they cut a few of them, unless there's a drop-down arrow you missed or something. Anyways, is there anything else you wanted to tell us about the game from your hands-on time with it?
I'm trying to think what else. One thing I did notice was that for whatever reason, 100 Mario Challenge is now called Super Mario Challenge in the course bot menu, or whatever the course menu is. So I don't know what the difference is. I asked the Nintendo rep, and he said he didn't know either. He didn't know if it was just a naming change, or if there's actually a difference between Super Mario Challenge and 100 Mario Challenge. If I had to guess, maybe they just took out the 100 Mario limit.
Oh, one more question. How did it feel in general, like using the interface and, playing on a 3DS instead of a Wii U gamepad and TV?
Oh, I would argue that it almost feels more comfortable on 3DS, only because you're not holding the Wii U. You don't have to worry about resting the Wii U gamepad on your leg or anything. Like, you can hold the 3DS and your arm won't get tired, for example. So in that sense, it does feel a little more comfortable, I guess, than making a course on the Wii U gamepad, but that's really the only difference.
So now that you actually got to play the game, what are your thoughts on it so far? Are you looking forward to it coming out, in a few months here, or will you just stick with the Wii U one?
As for how I feel about the game, I feel the same way I felt about it before. I mean, it's Mario Maker on 3DS. If you don't have a Wii U and you really want to make your own Mario Maker levels, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to do a good job of that. But if you have the Wii U version, and the fact that the two versions don't really communicate at all, I don't really see why you would buy this. Like, nothing I played in my, admittedly, 5 minutes of playtime, nothing I played in that 5 minutes jumped out at me like, oh, this justifies the 3DS version of Mario Maker. No, it still just feels like, kind of like, why is this being made? Especially
given the fact they can't even upload the levels you create on the 3DS one.
Exactly. So, I mean, I feel like it's a decent approximation of Mario Maker on 3DS without everything that kind of makes the Wii U version of Mario Maker so cool. And I guess kind of exacerbating the possible pitfalls, because, in the Wii U version, if you get a bad level, you can just skip it. But they've taken so much of that functionality out now, where you have less control over the levels you choose, as you were saying. So, again, I don't really I don't know what they're going for with this game, other than to maybe try to squeeze a little more sales, or a few more sales out of a game that was on the Wii U.
Yeah, that could be. I guess we'll see for sure once the game comes out and we're able to review it for ourselves. But on a more exciting note, you also got to play with the NES Classic as well, right? Which I got to go hands-on with a few weeks ago. But what did you think of it?
I love that little thing. I think you probably remember back when it was announced, I was kind of like, that's cool, but maybe not for me. I'm not like, I'd have to go out and buy one right now, but I have to say, like, it's pretty cool. Like, it's adorable, and you're not prepared for just how tiny and weightless it is. Like, when you see it in person. Like, and you pick it up and it weighs almost nothing.
Yeah, you posted a picture on Twitter of it sitting not just on your hand, but within your hand.
Within my hand, yeah. So this thing is, and now admittedly I have, pretty big monster hands, but still, like, it fit comfortably within my hand, and the thing almost, like, I feel like it wouldn't even work well as a paperweight, it's so light. And then, it's really cool looking, and it looked great. Like, the HDMI output, it looked, as you said in your own preview, Andre, it definitely looked better than the typical Wii U Virtual Console game. So I was really impressed with that. I love the menu. I think the menu music's really cool. 4 save states per game. It's a cool little package. And it makes me, seeing it and playing it in person, makes me want a Super NES Classic that much more, is what I can really say.
Right? A classic Super Nintendo really needs to happen. I mean, I need one.
Yeah. Like, after seeing and playing this thing in person, I need a mini Super Nintendo like this. Just go out and buy this, people, so that we get the Super NES we want. Like, just make sure this sells well. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I did a pretty good job covering the system before, but I know, Ash, you point out one glaring hole in my coverage, so can you tell us a little bit about what you tried out on the NES Classic?
Well, obviously, it was Mega Man 2, because somebody who may or may not be the other person in this discussion, of all the games that he recorded at his own event, did not get Mega Man 2, which is obviously the most important game on the NES Classic Edition. So, I took it upon myself to do a quick run of Airman stage for everyone.
Yeah, you're just a bit of a Mega Man aficionado, but as such, how did it stack up to like other versions of the game, such as on the Wii U Virtual Console?
Oh, it felt really nice. It felt like the difference between playing like the Wii U Virtual Console version versus Mega Man Legacy Collection version, where like the visuals are really nice and the music it sounds right, and obviously there's very little input lag. So actually, that actually brings me to another point. If I can revisit Mario Maker 3DS really quick. When I was talking about how good the Mario 1, Mario 3, and Mario World themes look, like, kind of think about the difference between, like, a Virtual Console version and then playing the 3DS version of Mega Man Legacy Collection and seeing how that presentation looks. And that's kind of what I'm going for here with how Mega Man 2 looked on the NES Classic. It just looked better than your typical Virtual Console title. It was a very true HDMI, 1080p approximation of what these games look like.
And it felt just as responsive to you too then, right? Like no lag or anything?
It doesn't seem like there's a huge difference. So, I mean, I don't really get any major lag on the Wii U Virtual Console. Now, that might be because of my TV-specific settings. But I can say for sure that playing on the NES Classic, I didn't feel any major input lag. I mean, it was pretty good. And, I mean, I was able to play Mega Man 2, which is obviously reliant on super precise timing and platforming, and I was fine. And I didn't die except for in the boss fight. So, yeah, I mean, I felt like it played fine.
Okay, well, is there anything else about the NES Classic you wanted to share, or is that it?
I guess I can comment on the controller really quick for the NES Classic. It felt, honestly, I mean, for better and worse, I guess, it felt exactly like the old boxy NES controller, which it really feels exactly the same. It's kind of crazy. Even the buttons depress in the same way. Like, it really does feel like a legitimate NES controller, except it's obviously, it's not. So, it's really interesting. I do have one thing that did stand out to me as kind of a weird design decision, which is the fact that it's called the select button, but I'm not talking about the one in the controller. I'm talking about the one on the console, and that is the only way to exit out of a game. I think.
You mean the reset button?
Yeah. So it's where the reset button would have been on the old NES, but it's actually called the select button. And I don't know why they call it that, but either way, there's no way to access the game menu from your controller. So, if you choose not to have the NES Classic sitting next to you when you're playing, you're going to have to get up each time you want to switch games or, do a save state or something like that, which seems like kind of a weird oversight.
Yeah, I agree. I wish there was some way to do it from the controller itself.
Yeah.
But maybe they're assuming since the controller cords are so short that you'll always be within arm's length of the NES Classic itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright, well I think that about wraps up for us here, guys. So thanks so much for listening. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below, which is a good way to keep up to date and everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain for more on the NES Classic, Super Mario Maker 3DS, and other things gaming as well. Catch you later. Bye.